Amie, welcome to Art and Cocktails. I'm such a fan of your work and I'm so excited to chat with you today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Kat. I'm so grateful and I can't wait to dive into all the discussions we're going to have.
Yes, I'm so excited. So I have personally came across your work on Instagram and I just fell in love with your writing and your quotes that you share all the time, but there's definitely a lot more to you than your beautiful writing. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are and what you do?
Of course. My name is Amy, and I am an author predominantly. And I've always wanted to tell stories since I was very, very little. And whether that was through acting or screenplays or books, I just wanted to tell stories. And I felt incredibly determined to make this happen for myself. I always wanted to be a professional artist. I always wanted to make money from my art. As I'm sure everybody knows who is listening, the journey of becoming a full-time artist was very, very hard and very lonely one. So I started my Instagram called Inspired to Write. I think it's 10 years ago this September. So it's been a decade of sharing my creative journey online. And I was just like, I want to talk about what it's like to take your art seriously. 10 years ago, I wasn't making any money from my art. I was just being rejected, ignored, nothing was going on. And for many, many years, that was the case. And I put that story online and I shared my insights as to what it's like to be navigating the silence as an artist and to be rejected as an artist, but also what it felt like to have the wins and what it felt like to navigate perfectionism. And it just became this journal of like the creative life. And
Mm.
my community grew online. I started a podcast. I started doing a lot more nonfiction writing about the creative process itself. And yeah, bringing this incredible audience along with me as I published my first novels and finally got a traditional publishing deal. And yeah, it's been huge and beautiful. And I love that I documented every step of the way.
I'm so happy that you did as well. It's so inspiring, and I can relate to many points of your story as well. I think sometimes with as artists, when we start showing up and creating our own opportunities, it almost feels like failure, right? You're like, oh, well, I got rejected. I guess here's the second best. But you know this now through all your experiences and your journey, that's actually a way to get noticed. Was there a moment internally that you decided, I don't care who's rejecting me, I'm going to start showing up and doing the thing that I want to do? Was there like a shift that happened, or was it a
Yeah.
gradual series of events?
I'm sure I think it crept up on me gradually, but I have this one moment where I broke down. I was crying my little eyes out. I was like, I have been desperately trying to seek approval and get permission from gatekeepers. So for a lot of the people listening, it's going to be like gallerists. For me as an author, it was I needed the publishers to give me permission. I was being rejected hundreds and hundreds of times. And I realized that not only that was happening, but every single day I rejected myself because I refused to give myself permission to show up in my own name. I was telling myself that no, you cannot do it on your own. You need permission. You have to wait until you're chosen. And it was this one, I recorded it and it's an incoherent recording because I'm just crying. And I'm going, I don't understand why I've also been rejecting myself. I also have said, no, you're not worthy of taking up space. And so very slowly after that moment, I realized that I needed to choose myself and take up space in my own way. So I started sharing my own writing. I started sharing my creations that I do on canvas by myself. And I started taking up space with no permission. I called it like a self-coronation. I put my crown on my own head and sat on the throne. And no one told me I was allowed to do that. I think all artists need to do that. We need to recognize that we get to choose ourselves before anybody else chooses us. And we can be very successful without permission.
100%. I love that. I love that reframe that we are rejecting ourselves when we're only letting other people, quote unquote, crown us. I love
Yeah.
that because I have an Art Queens membership. So I'm all about like,
Love, love,
crowning,
love.
dusting off the crown, all the crown metaphors. Can you talk a little bit about this difference? I think as creatives, writers, authors, coaches, like healers and artists, we have a need to connect with people. Obviously, our work needs an outlet, whether it's eyes or collectors, whatever, right? Can you talk about the difference between this need for validation and acceptance from the outside and this desire to actually be successful and connect? Because I don't think there's anything wrong, right? So how do we
No.
know? How do we know when it's our ego trying to like squeeze us into a little box, into the gatekeeper world, Or are we trying to just genuinely connect and share our work with the world? How do you know that for yourself?
Kat, this is the best conversation because I don't feel like it's being had very often. I feel like you either get people being like, let's get approval. The only way you be an artist is by having people pick you, or you get recently read The Creative Act by Rick Rubin, and he's very only create for yourself. If you create for any type of audience, you're betraying the purity of art. Very purist, romantic view of what creation is. But to me, the creative process is super messy, super human. And of course, we're going to want to connect. Of course, we want people to see us. I think most artists are creating to connect with other people, but I think we've inherited quite a lot of shame for that. And so recently I've been really reclaiming the sentence, I make art for the attention. I make art so that I can show you my art and have you be like, wow, I see a piece of myself in your thing that you made. I really want to lean further back into it being okay to create for external validation. We are humans. We are not meant to be existing on an island. It's okay that we need the approval from others. I think what happens is when we seek the approval from others before we've given the approval to ourselves is when it becomes a problem. It's a super nuanced and complex conversation, Kat, and I'd love to know what you'd think. But for me, I needed to give myself permission before I received permission externally. I needed to know that my work was worthy before I was told my work was worthy. Because if I had built my whole career on only other people telling me that my work was good, I would always be looking. I would always be needing more, and it would be very unsustainable, and I'd constantly be depending on external validation to be able to keep going, which puts me in a very vulnerable position. So for me, I create art for the attention. I want an audience. I want to be seen. I want to connect. And I'm ambitious, really ambitious. But I also need to have that foundation of I will choose myself every single time. I know I have something to give. I know I have something to connect with other people.
That's so
Yeah.
powerful. Thank
What
you
do
so
you
much
think? I
for
think it's
sharing
such a
that.
hard conversation.
I love that. And I think it is so nuanced. I love that you said that because I think everyone always assumes that if you're an independent artist, self-starter entrepreneur, then you just don't want anyone else to work with. But a lot of times that's not the case. We still want to collaborate. We still want to grow. Like you said, most of us are so ambitious, and there's not like one or the other. It can be like yes and, right? Like, yes, I am fully trusting myself and I believe in my vision. And I don't care if it takes me a while to like find my place in the world, and enough opportunity comes that's a good fit, I'm also not going to reject it and get mad at them and tell them
Yes.
they suck.
I think
And
a lot
yeah.
of artists get lost in that martyrdom of like, oh, I've only got to do it for myself. And if any good opportunity comes around, I have to refuse it. For me, I self-published multiple books, and then a big five publisher came along and asked, commissioned a book from me. And I think it would have been very easy being like, no, I only choose myself. But I've already chosen myself, and I felt comfortable to go into that collaboration with them from a very powerful place. And it's,
Mm.
yeah, having those nuances and having that flexibility that I think allows us a lot of grace in a very complex journey.
I love that. That brought to mind the phrase, like, I want you, but I don't need you, knowing like, even if they don't invite you, you're still going to be perfectly fine. But it's wonderful to have that opportunity. I really love that. Can you talk about your going back a little bit about when you started self publishing? What was that experience like? For example, I'll give you a quick context. I'm an artist, but I also co-wrote two books with my partner Alicia, and we self-published the first one, and it was so empowering and fun. But as an artist, I had a different experience when I started creating my own shows. At the beginning, it felt like a little ick. Like, is this even legit? Are people going to make fun of me that I'm doing this? How was your experience when you first started showing up for yourself and creating your own opportunities?
I thought it was failure. And I think you mentioned that at the beginning. It can feel like failure because we've lived in a culture that says you have to be chosen as an artist. You're going to dare use your life to make art. You better have someone giving you permission. And so when I started self-publishing, I navigated a huge amount of shame. Oh, everyone knows that no one else wanted me. I had to do this by myself. It's like the loser road. I really had to look at a lot of really hard narratives. But the power it gave me, and it was slow. It's not been an explosion of self-publishing, but it was slow at first, and now it's very incredibly steady. And as I've realized that I could do this by myself, those narratives started changing. I don't need them. I can do this by myself. I don't need to rely on these big gatekeeping systems. But yeah, there was a huge amount of shame there initially. It has changed my life, and I'm so glad that I did it in this order. When Penguin came to me and asked me to write We Need Your Art, they said, we know you don't need us. And it felt so fucking good.
That is amazing.
I know, especially with my background of of years and years of rejection from these places, I felt so powerless. It is that I wanted it, but I did not need it, and they knew that I didn't need it, and they repeated that to me. And the power that it gave me as an author and an artist was huge. And I want that power for all of us, because too often I see artists frustrating on the ground beyond before these galleries, before these producers, before these publishing houses, being like, "I'll give you anything. You don't have to pay me shit. I will do whatever you want if you just pick me." But I want artists understanding that you can want them, you can want to collaborate with them, but you do not need them. You can do this on
Mm,
your own.
I absolutely love that. Can we talk a little bit about what it took for the publisher to come to you and fully acknowledge that you don't need them? And to me, like I use this metaphor of like building your own empire, like building your own queendom. What are some attributes do you think helped you get their attention and to help you stand out as your own person, as the expert of your work, and to for people to want to collaborate with you? If they haven't even mentioned, I'm sure their audience has something to do with it, but like, what do you think are some things you would go back and tell your younger self to focus on to give you this
Yeah, great.
power?
It was really interesting when it was September last year, so September 2023. I'd never been approached by a publisher in my life. All I'd ever done was beg them to look at me. And I'd stopped because I was self-publishing, and I was like, fuck it, I can't go through that again. I hated to feel that small. So I was not approaching any publishers, and I hadn't for several years. And in September 2023, 4 publishing houses reached out to me, all independently. It was like the weird month of my life. And very, very bizarre. Like 4 of the big 4, like so the big 4 publishing houses, like 4 or 5 reached out. I was like, what is going on? It was so bizarre. And there was obviously like if my audience size had clicked over to a point where their risk was lower and they felt like they could offer this thing. But I also know that the way I'd been showing up, how consistently I'd been showing up, like portfolio of work for them to look at and to know that I could do it, I'd proven to them that I could do it. I was less of a risk in their eyes because they could see books, they could see consistency of work, they knew my tone of voice, they knew my relationship to audience. Like they take them a lot of effort to be like, Amie is more than capable. This wasn't a bet, it wasn't a high risk bet. At least I was going to be able to produce a beautiful book, I was going to do it enthusiastically, I was going to be able to connect to an audience. And so having that proof of work was so valuable. Whereas if I had never dared to show up online, if I'd never dared to share my writing, if I'd never dared to share my voice, and all I ever did was just ask these publishing houses to see me with no evidence that I could do it, I think it would be a very different story. But I'd already provided the evidence there with, my history and all of my work. So yeah, just up your portfolio of creations and saying, hey, this is my life. I'm going to do it with or without you.
I love that. Absolutely. That's so beautiful. I'm so happy for you. You
Thank you,
deserve it
Pat.
so, so much. I want to ask you this. This is like an question. So I know that you, for your writing, like you publish books are fiction, right? And
Mm,
so is that what you thought was going to be like, quote unquote, your claim to fame, like you're writing? And
mm.
how important is it for creatives to stay kind of obviously committed to your dreams, be ambitious, but have that like element of flexibility? For example, like I'm sure if you could go back in time, like, did you think that your words on Instagram holding up like canvas paper would be the thing to put you on the map? Can you talk about
Yeah,
like
isn't it?
balancing that?
Yeah. So I did I've got 2 self-published fiction books, and I've also got 4 non-fiction books that I sell on my website. So I self-published in both genres, but I was always a fiction author first. And that was like one of the reason why I could write about creativity was because I was writing my stories. So yeah, I had vision. I was like, publish me for my fiction work. I become famous historical fiction writer. Like I saw a very thin vision of how I was going to get to be creatively successful. And this has been one of my biggest lessons is like I was being told by a lot of people, oh, make it, artists don't make it, just have a backup job, it's too risky. And if I was so determined to do it this one way, then they may have had a point. But creatives don't realize how many different ways we have to make impact, connect, build audience, get our art. Like there are so many different paths to creative success. And I was thinking so narrow at the beginning. And so for me, understanding that I will be creatively successful, and I already feel so creatively successful. I already feel so grateful for the work that I get to do. But knowing that I was going to be able to do that, it was going to be in a bizarre, beautiful, very Amie way, and knowing that we predict the exact path or the exact way that it's going to occur. So being open to bizarre opportunities and not niching down, especially, and just allowing like that energy to take you where it needs to go.
I love that so much. I can relate because I did not think I would have a magazine or a podcast. I was a painter's painter and, it all much felt weird. I was like, what, like, who am I? I had so much imposter syndrome. I'm like, I don't know anything about publishing magazines or blogs or whatever. And it's so funny because I'm so grateful I didn't listen to that voice and just like
Mm.
follow tuition. And I'm so glad that you did. I do have to ask though, how did the writing on some paper start? Because I love your quotes and I just want to know, like, what would that begin?
So it was actually a very strategic decision. So I noticed that I was typing out words and stuff, or I was putting it in my like caption words that I wanted people to see, and people weren't paying attention to them. And I noticed also that the algorithm really liked it when I showed my face. And I was like, well, people will see my face, but they're also gonna fucking see some words. So I was like, I'll just hold up the words with my face. And then began me holding up signs with my words on them.
I love that so much. And I always love seeing your content so much. Okay, on the
Thanks.
flip side, if you feel comfortable sharing, how do you navigate when people don't understand words or
Mm.
misinterpret what you're posting? Maybe like the backlash. I feel like this day and age, everyone has an opinion online, and like the most gentle can cause so much controversy. I experienced it on my end as well. How do you navigate that? And do you have any tips for people who might be afraid to share their words and art
Mm.
because they're afraid of offending someone?
Yeah. I've had, for some reason recently, have had multiple big misunderstandings on the internet. And it's been really good for me, really good to navigate it because artists will be misunderstood. If you choose to take up space, if you do the brave thing and share your art, you will be misunderstood. You will rub people the wrong way. You will ruffle feathers. We are not here to be so boring that no one, our creations, if no one's provoked, you're not doing a good job. And I think a lot of artists are like, I'm so scared of being misunderstood or stepping on someone's toes that I just can't, how do I not be misunderstood on the internet? And I think the beautiful truth, it's hard, but it's liberating, is that you will be misunderstood on the internet. And it's how you navigate that. So the other day I wrote a thread and it was just on me. It wasn't very well worded. Anyway, everyone interpreted it as me saying artists shouldn't make money, which is like the opposite of what I talk
Oh
about,
no.
believe. And I got like absolutely by people being like, artists deserve money. I'm like, and being misunderstood in such a profound way, like literally opposite of what I deeply believe, was intense. But I also was totally and utterly okay, Kat. Like what I meant and I, said, and I was totally okay. And knowing that it is safe to be misunderstood, like I read my nervous system, I made sure to not look a huge amount at the comments. I had like procedures in place to make sure I felt okay, but we can navigate being misunderstood. We can navigate having shit said about us on the internet. We are artists and we are not fragile. We are resilient and we can handle this. I'm not saying that we need to be tough-skinned. I really believe that our sensitivity is super important. And I did get upset. I like woke and I was like, fuck, this is so upsetting because it's the
No.
opposite of what I meant. Um, but then I was still safe. I was okay. I was able to come back to myself and back to my body. And I think all artists need to know that it is safe to be misunderstood. You will be misunderstood, but you can navigate it. And I think it's about knowing yourself, knowing like I know that's not what I meant. And so I really sunk
Mm.
into that knowledge.
Thank you so much for sharing. I get that all the time too. And it's just important to remember that when people read our comments or our words or see our art, they're only seeing it through their own filters, and their filters might be really like traumatized right now or really hurting.
Yeah.
And, be struggling financially. And that's why, like, when they the word
Yeah.
money, they can't even see anything around the text. They're like, no, like, just basically it's like a fulfilling prophecy. And it is really hard when you have a certain intention and it doesn't come across. But I appreciate you sharing, like regulating your nervous system, minimizing
Mm.
contact with that, and just knowing you are safe. Like, as much as the internet feels very threatening sometimes, at the end of the day, it really can't do anything to us.
Yeah, like I'm in my home, I have a cup of tea. I'm like safe.
Yeah. Oh, so much for sharing that. And speaking of money, I always ask my guests if you're comfortable sharing. If not, it's totally okay. But do you have any tips for creatives and artists and writers to support themselves and not put so much pressure? I know there's like, yes, we get to make money from our art. And yes, we can make money from our art. But also in the meantime, or maybe during different seasons, like, do you have any tips for how to create other income streams and like really into all our gifts? This is something I'm personally really passionate about from getting really burnt out like
Yeah.
once of my business, and knowing like it's okay if I'm taken care of from multiple angles and it doesn't all have to come from one source. Would love to hear your thoughts on that and how you navigate that part.
I love that you speak about this and to this because I think it's super important. I think artists, most of us have multiple interests anyway. Like we are creative in so many different fields. And again, we've been sold a narrative that we have to niche down, specialize, one thing, but we're allowed to focus on so many different things. Beyond the act of creativity, I speak to so many artists who love having a regular job alongside their art. I think there's a lot of shame with that, but like there's like a belief about having the financial pressure taken care of with a part-time or full-time like job. But for me personally, like I have the most diverse come like from so many different types of creations. And I love that because it means that no, it's not all pressure on my fiction books. Sorry, hiccup. It's not all pressure on my nonfiction books. They're a big part of the pie when it comes to we're selling prints. We're just setting that up at the moment. In class on making money as a creative yesterday or the day before. I'm looking at my big board of all the things I have to do. We have a creative community, like having beautiful, diverse like incomes is so good and it makes me feel so safe because there's so many different things and I don't need to get burnt out on one thing. Yeah, I just shift my focus depending on what I want and need.
I love that. Yeah, I'm the same way. And everything that is working so great for me now once felt like a shameful failure. And now I'm like, thank God that I like listened to these little whispers and started like I have a community and them and all that. And it's just been a gift. It's been a gift
Mm,
both for my mental health and my business and my art. So thank you so much for sharing that. I just love having these conversations to like normalize that it's not like, oh, book deal after book deal or only like
yeah.
giant foot paintings. Like, no, there's so many other ways
There's
and you don't
so
have
many
to wait.
ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's super important to talk about. Again, I think this was part of my very narrow view of what success would be. I'd be chosen, my fiction would, I would get fiction book, diction book deal, and I thought that was the only way I would be happy. And whilst I think I was kind of onto something because I truly think that I need a life filled with creativity and filled with writing, there are so many different ways to write and there are so many different ways to create. And yeah, I have a hugely diverse range of activities that contribute to my bank account. And I love it. Like I won't change it. If someone said I will give you just book deal after book deal right now, I'd be like, I would rather not because I would prefer to have this huge range of magical activities that I
Yes.
do.
I feel the same exact way. Thank you so much for sharing. One more question before we talk about your book, which I'm so excited to chat about. Can you tell us, like, what is your vision for the creative community? Right now, there's so much chaos. I mean, arguably always chaos in the world, but right now, unless we have the election, then we have all
Yeah.
these wars. And artists might feel like, I hear this a lot, like I thought about showing up and sharing my art when there's so many other horrible things going on.
Mm.
What do you think that the artist should focus on, and why is showing up and creating our work more important than ever? I know you believe this too, so
I'm about to get on one. Well, once it's like, how do you not share your art in a time like this? Like this is the time for art. And I understand where this response comes from, this idea that like, oh my God, like wars are happening. How dare I like put out my painting that's worth, dollars. It's like generous to share your art. It is generous to put art up for sale. And I don't think we really understand that as a culture. Um, I read a really good book recently called I was gonna say We Need Your Art. That's my book. Your Brain on Art. And
that
it was
is a good
looking
book.
at, yeah, We Need Your Art's a great book, but Your Brain on Art, also incredible. It's quite a dense academic book, but it looks at like biological impact on art, our mental health when we consume and make art, and communities and how communities change when you bring the arts into them. We don't understand. We are like, there is so much evidence now of the profound impact of creativity in communities. Like when you bring your art to places, communities thrive, they change. Our biology changes, like cellularly get better, we heal, mentally better. How do you not share your art in times of crisis? Because it is a part of the healing of this world. And I really want that narrative to shift because I think we're constantly seeing art as trivial when it is like the most powerful pharmaceutical drug we could ever find. It is a community healer, a body healer, like a soul mover. Like it's important.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm also reading that book right now. Actually, it's so
Oh,
funny.
are
I think
you
we're on the
great?
same frequency. Yeah. And it's so funny. There's another book I read a few years ago called Art as Therapy, and that art therapy, like art as therapy. And it has similar concepts where the viewers actually have the same healing experiences as the artist creating it. And it's a like mutually benefiting for all society. And it's so powerful. And we need to really talk about these things because it's not like, yes, it's a luxury in terms of like financial sometimes, but in terms of being exposed to it, being surrounded by it, making it a part of our everyday life, it should definitely be a necessity for mental health and well-being. So thank you so much
100%.
for that. Okay, now it's time to talk about your book, another amazing book, which I can't wait to read. Can you tell us what to expect? Who is this book for, and when it's coming out, and all the details?
Thank you. I'm so excited. It's my first chance to really like spruik book. So I'm very grateful. So we've got a very big lead up time. We've got 7 months until it comes out. So I've got 7 months of like trying to stop some pre-orders. So it'd be an interesting time, but I'm excited to just be the champion of my own art, which is so hard to do sometimes, but I'm going to be the champion of my own art. So we need your art, and then the byline is stop fucking around and make something.
I
It's
love
a call to
that.
action. It's for artists, whether you're at the beginning or whether you just are in a slump, whether you're an extremely experienced artist and you're just feeling ugh. It's like a river of the creative spirit. It's here to talk about all the classic creative blocks. It's here to talk about like putting the crown on, the coronation process. It's really all of my signs distilled into one beautiful creative Bible. So yeah, we're going to obviously the classics: procrastination, perfectionism, imposter syndrome, comparison. We're going to look at patience and failure, preparing for your own success, celebrating. Career journey is so big, and I wanted to put like together a guide as to how we navigate this, and so we don't feel so alone.
I love that. I cannot wait to read it. I'm so, so
Thank
excited. So
you.
when is it supposed to come out?
So March 13th next year.
Yay. It's so exciting. That was one of the challenges for me as a self-published author to wait that long for the book to come out like 2 years later. I was like, what is this? But it's
For
gonna be
me,
worth
like,
it.
yeah, like I could publish my book tomorrow. Could just make it happen and be out there right now. And I talk to my publishers. I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah, what do you guys
What
do
are
back
you doing?
there?
Um, so yeah, it's been a different experience, going the traditional route, but a great love. And yeah, it's been to have the support of other creatives on this journey.
Amazing. And how are you celebrating this amazing milestone?
Oh, thank you. There's been so many different. I actually spoke about this in the celebration chapter of the book, and We Need Your Art. It's so interesting, especially as an author, because there's so many different, spots to celebrate. So when I celebrated finishing my draft, or when I celebrated getting the book deal, and we celebrated the count and the pre-orders starting the other day. I'm big on the little miracles of life. So, we took a good bottle of wine and some nice olives, and we just had a
Yeah.
little celebration at home. But yeah, there's so important milestones to mark as creatives, and I think it's incredibly important that we do.
I love that. I totally agree. Amie, thank you so much for being an awesome guest. I'm so grateful I got to chat with you, and I hope I get to chat with you a lot more. I feel
Oh
like
my
we're
God, me
like
too.
vibing. Tell listeners, where can they find you? How can they follow you? And all about
Amazing.
like the book orders and any other
Yeah.
programs you have.
Yeah, so you can follow me on Instagram at in2write. And then if you want to look at any of my courses, any of my like podcasts, you can find it all on my website, which is amiemcnee.com. And my name is AMIEMCNEE, Amie McNee. And you'll find a book there too. So you can go find your region and pre-order the book. And I feel like it's a good time to explain why pre-orders support authors, because I'm lazy. I've never pre-ordered a book in my life until I started realizing how important it was for authors to have pre-orders. So basically, the more pre-orders I can get, the more the publishers will believe in me, and the more the publishers will actually put some energy behind the book, put some funds behind the book. When you pre-orders coming in, they tell the bookshops, which mean the bookshops might, store and put the book out the front. Like it's such an incredibly beautiful gift for you to give an author to pre-order their book, because it really, like, you care, and so other people can care.
Yes. Oh, it's so true. I remember going through this too and doing podcast after podcast, but it was really fun too. There's like a satisfaction in it, you
Of
know?
course.
Get to reflect on your book every time you talk about it.
Yeah,
So
I love that. I mean, I talk about the creative process for a long time, so I think I'm going to be okay.
yeah, yeah, you're gonna. Oh my gosh, Amie. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I'm gonna link all your social media and website for our listeners in the show notes, and I'm so excited to
You.
read the book and see what else you're up to. Thank you so much, Amie.
Thank you so much. So grateful for you.